The rain hammered against the windshield like bullets from heaven. Michael Roberts sat frozen in his Mercedes, hands trembling around a cold coffee cup. 11:47 p.m. The board meeting had drained every ounce of his soul. Through the fogged glass, a shadow moved beneath a crumbling awning across the street. A young woman clutching a small child against her chest, both soaked to the bone. The streetlight caught her face, hollow cheeks, desperate eyes, blue eyes, impossibly familiar blue eyes. She saw his car, hesitated, then walked toward him through the downpour. His window descended halfway. She knelt on the wet pavement, rain streaming down her face, the child whimpering in her arms. Her voice cracked through the storm. "I'm only asking for a bit of leftover food, sir." Michael's heart stopped. Those eyes, that small face pressed against the woman's shoulder. He didn't know that one sentence would unravel the biggest secret of his life. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. 5 years ago, Michael Roberts had everything. The penthouse office overlooking downtown Dallas. The Highland Park mansion with 12 bedrooms. A wife who turned heads at every charity gala. And Emily 3 months old, with eyes like sapphires and a crescent-shaped birthmark behind her left ear. He remembered that last morning. Jennifer had been feeding Emily, humming softly. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. "Daddy has to go make us richer." Jennifer had laughed, kissing his cheek. He'd flown to New York for a $50 million deal, leaving his family behind. The call came at 10:23 p.m. "Mr. Roberts, there's been an accident on Highway 75. Your wife's vehicle." The rest dissolved into white noise. He'd chartered a plane immediately. But those 3 hours felt like drowning in slow motion. The scene was hell on asphalt. His BMW reduced to a charred skeleton. Smoke still rising into the night sky. Police officers with grave faces. "We're so sorry, sir. Your wife didn't make it?" The infant, they looked away. "The fire was too intense. We couldn't recover." Michael had fallen to his knees on the wet pavement, surrounded by flashing lights and the acrid smell of burned rubber. His daughter, his baby girl, gone. What he didn't know was that 2 miles away, a young nurse named Sarah Mitchell was running toward the flames. She'd just finished a double shift at Baylor Medical Center, exhausted to her bones. The explosion had shattered the night. Sarah's training kicked in before fear could stop her. She'd sprinted toward the wreckage, her heart hammering. Through the smoke, she'd seen a woman stumbling away from the burning car, clutching a designer handbag. The woman had looked back once at the flames, then disappeared into the darkness. But Sarah heard it, a thin, desperate wail from inside the vehicle. A baby's cry. She'd wrapped her jacket around her hands and reached into the inferno. The heat had seared her left palm, leaving scars she'd carry forever. But she'd found her a tiny infant strapped in a car seat, screaming, alive. Sarah had run to the hospital with the baby clutched against her chest. In the emergency room, they'd checked for identification. Nothing. No papers. No family. Just a gold bracelet engraved with initials, Mimser, Forever Love. The hospital listed her as Jane Doe. The authorities searched, but no one came forward. After 3 months of foster care limbo, Sarah had made a choice that would alter 3 lives forever. She'd filed for temporary custody and named the baby Lisa, a fresh start for a child the world had abandoned. For 2 years, Sarah had been Lisa's entire world. until the restaurant fired her for bringing a toddler to work interviews, until the rent came due and the car became their home, until that rainy night when desperation drove her to knock on a stranger's window. Michael's hands moved on autopilot, reaching for the paper bag on his passenger seat. The sandwich he'd ordered for the drive home, turkey and Swiss on wheat. He lowered the window fully and handed it through, along with a bottle of water. "Here," he said, his voice rougher than intended. The woman's eyes widened. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." She clutched the food like it was gold, then did something that made Michael's throat tighten. Instead of eating, she tore the sandwich into small pieces and fed them one by one to the child in her arms. The little girl, maybe 2 years old, smiled through her tears. "Thank you, mister." Those eyes, blue as a summer sky, bright despite the rain and darkness. The same shade as no. It couldn't be. The child giggled, and the sound pierced through 5 years of carefully constructed numbness. Michael watched the woman press her lips to the girl's forehead, humming a melody he couldn't quite place. Her hands were gentle, practiced, loving. "What's her name?" Michael heard himself ask. "Lisa," the woman said softly. "She's my whole world." Michael's vision blurred. If Emily had lived, she'd be around this age now. Same height, same wispy blonde hair, same he couldn't breathe. "I have to go," he choked out, and drove away before the woman could respond. His rearview mirror caught her silhouette fading into the rain, the child's small hand waving goodbye. The 30-minute drive home took an eternity. Michael's mansion loomed ahead, every window dark except the security lights that clicked on automatically. 12 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a pool nobody swam in, a garden nobody walked through. He parked in the garage and sat in the silence for 20 minutes. Eventually, he forced himself inside. The house smelled of expensive cleaning products and emptiness. He walked past the formal dining room where he never ate, past the living room where he never sat, straight to the second floor. Emily's nursery door was always closed, had been for 5 years. But tonight, Michael's hand turned the knob before his mind could stop him. The room was exactly as Jennifer had left it. Pale yellow walls with hand-painted butterflies, a white crib with a mobile of silver stars, a rocking chair in the corner where Jennifer used to sing lullabies. Tiny clothes still folded in the dresser, never worn because Emily had been so small. Michael sank into the rocking chair. It creaked under his weight, the first sound it had made in half a decade. He sat there as midnight turned to 1, 1 turned to 3, 3 turned to 5. The rain stopped. Dawn crept through the curtains. That little girl's face wouldn't leave his mind. The way she'd smiled despite being soaked and hungry. The way the woman had given away food she clearly needed herself. The bracelet of bruises on the woman's wrist, barely visible in the streetlight. The threadbare jacket. The child's shoes held together with duct tape. If Emily were alive, Michael would want someone to help her, to see her, to care. By 6 in the morning, he'd made his decision. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the cracked windshield of her 1998 Ford sedan. Her back screamed in protest. Sleeping upright in a driver's seat did that. Lisa was curled in the passenger seat, wrapped in every piece of clothing they owned. Sarah touched Lisa's forehead. Still warm. The cough had started 3 days ago, wet and rattling. They'd finished the sandwich from last night for breakfast. Lisa had eaten most of it, while Sarah pretended she wasn't hungry. $23 left. Enough for one more tank of gas or 3 days of food. Not both. Mama, Lisa whispered, her voice hoarse. My throat hurts. I know, baby. We'll get you medicine soon. A lie. Medicine cost money they didn't have. Sarah had 5 job interviews lined up today. She'd borrowed a dress from the church donation box and scrubbed it clean in a gas station bathroom. Lisa would have to come along. She had no one to watch her. The first restaurant took one look at Lisa and said they'd keep her resume on file. The second never called her back to the kitchen. The third manager asked why she'd bring a kid to an interview. The fourth said they'd already filled the position. The fifth didn't even let her through the door. By 3 in the afternoon, Sarah sat on a bench outside a grocery store, Lisa asleep in her lap. Other shoppers walked past, eyes sliding away. A woman in a fur coat dropped a $5 bill at Sarah's feet without making eye contact, as if feeding a pigeon. Sarah picked up the money because she had to, because Lisa needed it. But shame burned in her chest like acid. She sang quietly, the same song her grandmother had taught her. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Lisa stirred, coughing hard enough to shake her small frame. Too hard. Sarah's nursing training screamed warnings: pneumonia, bronchitis, something bad brewing. She needed a clinic, needed medicine, needed help she couldn't afford. Meanwhile, across Dallas, Michael Roberts pulled into the vacant lot where he'd seen them last night. The space was empty except for an old Ford with a cracked windshield parked in the far corner. He'd spent 3 hours driving through the area, searching, and now he'd found them. Through his tinted windows, he watched the woman hand-washing tiny clothes with bottled water, hanging them on the car's side mirrors to dry. The little girl played with a stuffed rabbit missing one ear, singing to herself. Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He could approach them, offer help directly. But something held him back in the fear in the woman's eyes last night when she'd knelt in the rain. The way she'd clutched her daughter protectively. She'd been hurt before. Probably many times. So Michael made a different choice. He'd help from the shadows first. Let them learn to trust before revealing himself. He drove to the nearest grocery store and bought everything a mother and child might need. 5 days later, Lisa's cough had turned into something darker. Sarah woke at dawn to find her daughter burning with fever, her small chest heaving with each labored breath. 103 degrees on the gas station thermometer she'd stolen months ago. Mama. Lisa whimpered, her lips cracked and pale. Can't breathe good. Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. She'd been a nurse once. She knew pneumonia when she saw it. The wet rattle in Lisa's lungs, the bluish tint creeping around her fingernails, the way each breath seemed to cost her everything. Sarah drove to the public hospital's emergency room with her hazard lights flashing, praying the Ford's engine wouldn't die. $87 in her pocket money from odd jobs she'd scraped together over the past week. It wouldn't be enough. It was never enough. The waiting room reeked of antiseptic and desperation. After 3 hours, a harried doctor finally saw them. He was young, exhausted, his eyes barely registering Sarah's face as he examined Lisa. Early-stage pneumonia, he confirmed, not looking up from his clipboard. She needs antibiotics, possibly hospitalization for monitoring. We're looking at $3,400 for treatment and medication. Sarah's world tilted. I have $87, please. She's only 2 years old. There has to be payment plans or no insurance. The doctor's voice was flat, mechanical. I lost my job. I'm trying to get back on my feet, but, ma'am, this is a county hospital, not a charity. We can't treat without payment guarantee. Come back when you have the funds or proof of insurance. He was already moving to the next patient. Sarah grabbed his coat sleeve. She could die. My daughter could die. I'll come. Then I suggest you figure out your financial situation quickly. He pulled away, signaling security. Sarah dropped to her knees right there in the emergency room, tears streaming down her face. Please, I'm begging you. Take the $87. I'll work it off. I'll clean your hospital. I'll do anything. The security guard was already approaching, one hand on his radio. Ma'am, you need to leave. My daughter can't breathe. Leave now, or we'll call the police. Sarah gathered Lisa in her arms and stumbled toward the exit, her daughter's wheezing breaths loud in the sterile hallway. On the hospital steps, she collapsed, clutching Lisa to her chest as sobs racked her body. Lisa's small hand touched her face. Don't cry. Mama, I'm okay. But she wasn't. Her fever was climbing, her skin burning through her thin clothes. Sarah didn't know they were being watched. Michael had been parking his car near their usual spot, a bag of groceries in his trunk. When he'd seen Sarah speeding past in that death-trap Ford, something in the way she drove frantic, desperate, had made him follow at a distance. He'd waited in the hospital parking lot for over 3 hours, telling himself he was being ridiculous. But he couldn't leave. Not until he knew they were safe. When Sarah emerged, carrying her daughter down the steps, her face destroyed by grief. Michael heard every word she sobbed into that little girl's hair. I'm so sorry, baby. Mama tried. I tried so hard. The child was limp in her arms, breathing in shallow gasps, even from 50 feet away. Michael could see the bluish tint to her lips. He'd seen that before. Emily had developed pneumonia at 2 months old. Jennifer had panicked, rushing her to their private physician. They'd had the best care, the best medicine, and Emily had recovered in days. This child would not survive the night without treatment. Michael knew it with devastating certainty. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel. He could walk away. Should walk away. These weren't his people, his responsibility. He'd done enough, leaving groceries, staying silent. He'd already crossed too many boundaries. But that little girl's face, those blue eyes that haunted his dreams, Emily would be this age now. If someone had found Emily sick and dying, Michael would have wanted them to help, would have begged God and every angel in heaven to send someone who cared. He was out of his car before the decision fully formed. Sarah was rocking Lisa on the hospital steps, singing through her tears, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Excuse me." Michael's voice cut through her song. Sarah's head snapped up, eyes wild with fear. She clutched Lisa tighter, as if expecting him to take her. "Please don't call the police. Please, I'll leave. We'll go." "I'm not here to judge you." Michael kept his distance, hands visible, voice gentle. "I'm here to help. I don't need..." Her voice cracked. "We don't accept charity." "It's not charity. It's human decency." Michael took one step closer. "I couldn't help but overhear inside. Your daughter needs treatment. I can't pay you back. I have nothing. I'm not asking you to." Sarah stared at him, and recognition dawned slowly. "You're the man. From the rain. The sandwich. Yes. Why would you help us again? Michael looked at the little girl in her arms, her chest rising and falling too fast, her skin flushed with fever. This close. He could see the small features of her face, the way her hair curled at the temples, the delicate shape of her hands. Because someone should have helped you already, he said quietly. Let me take you to a private hospital. Real doctors. No questions asked. I can't afford. You don't have to. No strings attached. I promise. Sarah's eyes filled with fresh tears. Why, you don't even know us. I know enough. Michael's throat tightened. I know what it's like to lose a child. Please, let me do this. For a long moment, Sarah just stared at him. Then Lisa coughed a wet, horrible sound that turned into gasping. Her lips were turning blue. Okay, Sarah whispered. Okay. Please help her. Michael's car was warm, the leather seats soft as clouds compared to their Ford. He drove 12 miles to Baylor Scott and White Medical Center, the private wing where executives and politicians received care. Sarah sat in the back, cradling Lisa, whispering prayers. The emergency entrance opened like the gates of heaven. Staff in pristine uniforms rushed forward with a wheelchair. A doctor real, attentive, concerned appeared within minutes. Severe pneumonia, he confirmed after a quick examination. We need to admit her immediately. 5 to 7 days. Possibly oxygen support. It's serious, but treatable. He named a figure, $18,000 to $25,000. Sarah's face went white, but Michael was already pulling out his wallet. He placed a black card on the counter. Do whatever it takes. Whatever she needs. The doctor nodded and disappeared with nurses flanking him, wheeling Lisa toward the intensive care unit. Sarah stood frozen in the waiting room, trembling. Why are you doing this? Michael watched through the window as nurses hooked Lisa up to oxygen, started an IV, wrapped her in warm blankets. The little girl already looked better, her breathing easier. Because I once had a daughter, he said, his voice barely audible. And I'd give anything to hold her again. Sarah's hand found his arm, squeezing gently. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how I'll ever. You don't have to. Just let her get better. Through the window, Lisa opened her eyes and smiled weakly at her mother. And for the first time in 5 years, Michael felt something other than emptiness in his chest. Lisa spent 7 days in the hospital, and Sarah never left her side. The nurses brought her pillows and blankets, offered the parent sleeping chair. But Sarah rarely used it. She sat in the hard plastic visitor's chair, her hand wrapped around Lisa's small fingers, watching every breath, every heartbeat on the monitor. Michael came every day, always with an excuse. I was in the area for a meeting. The hospital cafeteria makes decent coffee. Just wanted to check on the billing situation. On day 2, he brought children's books classics like Good Night Moon and The Very Hungry Caterpillar. On day 3, fresh clothes for Sarah from a department store, tags still attached. She'd protested, but he'd left them on the chair and disappeared before she could refuse. Day 4 brought stuffed animals for Lisa, a soft gray elephant that she clutched even in her feverish sleep. Day 5, a sketchbook and crayons. Lisa's fever broke on the 6th day. She woke up clear-headed, her breathing normal, and the first thing she said was, "Where's the nice man?" Michael had been sitting in the waiting room, pretending to work on his laptop. Sarah came to get him, and when he entered the room, Lisa's face lit up brighter than the afternoon sun streaming through the window. "You came back." Lisa held up the elephant. "Look, mister, she's my friend now." "I'm glad." Michael sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "What's her name? Hope?" Lisa said it with absolute certainty. "Because Mama says you gave us hope." Michael's throat tightened. He glanced at Sarah, who was wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Over the next 2 days, something shifted. Lisa started calling him Uncle Mike without being prompted. She'd save her best crayon drawings for him, wobbly houses with triangle roofs, stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. One drawing made Michael's breath catch. 3 figures. A woman with long hair, a small girl in the middle, and a tall man. Above them, Lisa had written in her unsteady toddler scrawl, "My family." "That's you, Uncle Mike." Lisa pointed proudly. "You're in my family now." Sarah's eyes met his across the hospital bed, and something unspoken passed between them. Gratitude, trust, and maybe something more fragile, the beginning of hope, that they weren't completely alone anymore. On the 7th evening, after the doctors had cleared Lisa for discharge the next morning, Sarah and Michael sat in the hospital corridor. Lisa was asleep, finally peaceful, her oxygen levels perfect. "I don't know how to thank you," Sarah said quietly. "You saved her life." "You saved it first." Michael stared at his hands. 2 years ago, you said the accident." Sarah nodded slowly. "Highway 75. I was driving home from my shift at Baylor Medical Center. I heard the explosion, saw the flames. There was a woman running away from the car, and I thought she'd gone for help." She paused, her voice dropping. "But then I heard Lisa crying. She was just 3 months old, strapped in the back seat. The fire was spreading so fast." Michael's hands had gone cold. Highway 75. 5 years ago. He'd lost everything on that highway. "I pulled her out," Sarah continued. "Got burned pretty badly?" She held up her left hand, showing the scar tissue Michael had noticed but never asked about. But she was alive. That's all that mattered. The police searched for her family, but no one came forward. No one claimed her. After 3 months in the system, I couldn't stand it anymore. I filed for temporary custody. "What about your job, your life?" "I was a nurse, good at it too. But the hospital downsized, and single mothers with adopted kids aren't exactly attractive candidates elsewhere." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "My ex-husband left when I brought Lisa home. Said I was choosing a stranger's kid over our future. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was crazy." "You weren't crazy. You were selfless." "I don't feel selfless. I feel like I failed her. Look at us, homeless, hungry, sick. Some mother I turned out to be." "You gave her everything you had," Michael said firmly. "That's not failure. That's love." Sarah turned to look at him. Really look at him. "You said you lost a daughter. Will you tell me?" Michael was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, "Her name was Emily. She was 3 months old. There was an accident the same highway. Actually, 5 years ago. They told me she died in the fire. My wife, too. I never got to say goodbye. Never got to hold her one last time." "Oh, God," Sarah whispered. "I'm so sorry. For 5 years, I've been dead inside, going through the motions, building companies, making money. but never really living. Michael looked through the window at Lisa sleeping peacefully. Then I saw your daughter in the rain. Those eyes, that age. It was like looking at a ghost. Or maybe a second chance. She would be around Lisa's age now. You're Emily. Yes. They sat in silence. Two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate tragedies. The next morning, Lisa was discharged with a clean bill of health and a prescription for antibiotics. In the parking lot, Michael made an offer that would change everything. I have a guest house on my property, 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, completely separate from the main house. It's been empty for years. He spoke quickly, as if afraid she'd interrupt. You and Lisa could stay there. No rent, no obligations. Just until you get back on your feet. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. Pride, independence, fear, they all screamed at her to say no. But then Lisa coughed, a small reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. And Sarah's resolve crumbled. Why? She asked. Why do all this for strangers? Michael looked at Lisa, who was holding her elephant and smiling up at him with absolute trust. Because you're not strangers anymore, he said simply. And because helping you helps me remember what it feels like to be human. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Stay as long as you need, Michael said. There's no timeline. No pressure. As they drove to his property, Sarah following in her battered Ford, neither of them realized they were driving toward a truth that would shatter and rebuild them both. The guest house was more than Sarah had imagined. Clean, bright, with a small kitchen and a yard where Lisa could play safely. That first night, after tucking Lisa into a real bed with clean sheets, Sarah stood at the window and cried. For the first time in 2 years. Her daughter was safe, warm, fed, and Michael, watching from his mansion's window across the garden, felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years. Purpose. 6 weeks passed like a dream Sarah was afraid to wake from. Lisa thrived in the guest house, her cheeks filling out, her laughter becoming a constant soundtrack. Sarah found part-time work at a medical clinic downtown, and Michael insisted on paying for a used car to replace the dying Ford. They fell into a routine. Breakfast together on Sundays. Lisa playing in the garden while Michael worked from home. Movie nights where Lisa would fall asleep between them on the couch, her small body warm and trusting. Michael hadn't felt this alive in years. Every morning, he woke with purpose. Every evening, he looked forward to coming home. The mansion was no longer a mausoleum, but a place where a child's laughter echoed through empty halls. But he kept his distance emotionally, reminding himself this was temporary. Sarah would get back on her feet, they would move on, and he would return to his carefully constructed solitude. That illusion shattered on a Saturday afternoon in the garden. Lisa had been chasing butterflies, her blonde hair flying behind her like silk. She'd tripped over a garden stone and fallen hard, scraping her knee. Michael had been closer than Sarah, scooping her up before the tears could fully start. You're okay, sweetheart. Just a little scratch. He carried her to the patio, settling her on his lap while Sarah ran for the first aid kit. Lisa buried her face against his chest, her sobs quieting. Michael stroked her hair absently, the way he used to comfort Emily during her brief life. The gesture was automatic, muscle memory from a past that still haunted him. Lisa's hair had come loose from its ponytail, Falling forward, Michael gently brushed it back from her face, tucking it behind her ear to keep it away from her tears. That's when he saw it. Just behind her left ear, barely visible beneath the fine blonde strands, was a birthmark. Crescent-shaped, reddish-brown, exactly the size of his thumbnail. Michael's entire world stopped. Emily had a birthmark. In that exact spot, that exact shape. He'd kissed it 100 times during those precious 3 months, marveling at how it looked like a tiny moon against her pale skin. His hands began to shake. Lisa pulled back, looking at him with concern. "Uncle Mike, you okay?" He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The probability of 2 children having identical birthmarks in identical locations was astronomical. 1 in 500,000, maybe more. Sarah returned with a first aid kit, immediately noticing his expression. "Michael, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he managed, his voice strangled. I need to make a phone call." He set Lisa down gently and walked away on legs that didn't feel connected to his body. Inside his office, he locked the door and collapsed into his chair, his mind racing through impossibilities. Lisa was 2.5 years old. Emily would be 5 now. But Sarah said she'd rescued Lisa at 3 months old, 2 years ago. That would make Lisa 3 months old at the time of rescue. Now 2 years and 3 months later, 2.5. Emily had been 3 months old when she died. On Highway 75. In a fire that Sarah Mitchell had pulled a baby from. Michael's hands fumbled for his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found Marcus Williams, a private investigator he'd used for corporate due diligence. "Marcus, I need you to find something. Everything about an accident on Highway 75. 5 years ago. Every detail. Police reports, witness statements, autopsy records, everything." "That's a long time back, Michael." "What are we looking for?" "The truth," Michael whispered. "I need to know who died that night." 3 days felt like 3 years. Michael moved through his days on autopilot, smiling at Lisa, talking with Sarah, all while his mind screamed with questions he couldn't voice. Marcus called on the 4th day. "You're not going to like this," Marcus said without preamble. "The accident report lists 1 fatality, Jennifer Roberts, age 35. But here's what's strange. There's no record of a second body. No infant remains recovered. The official report says the fire was too intense. Complete cremation. But I pulled some strings and talked to the fire marshal who was on scene." Michael gripped the phone so hard his knuckles went white. "And he said it never sat right with him. Car fires don't usually burn hot enough for complete cremation, especially not for someone as small as an infant." But the case was closed quickly. No one pushed for a deeper investigation because the father was well. You were destroyed by grief. They didn't want to add to your suffering by suggesting the child might have suffered. "What about the hospital Sarah said she brought a baby to Baylor Medical Center that night?" "I checked. There's a record. Baby girl Jane Doe, approximately 3 months old. Admitted at 11:47 p.m. on the same night as your accident. No identification. Mother unknown. Eventually released to temporary foster care. Then to a Sarah Mitchell 6 weeks later." Michael's vision blurred. "Get me a DNA testing kit. The kind that can't be traced. I need results in 72 hours. "Michael, what's going on?" "Just do it." The DNA kit arrived the next morning via courier. Michael felt like a criminal, waiting for the right moment. It came during breakfast when Lisa dropped her spoon, and Michael retrieved it, swapping it with a clean one. The used spoon went into a sealed bag, along with strands of Lisa's hair he'd collected from her hairbrush, for his own sample. A simple cheek swab in the privacy of his bathroom. The waiting was torture. Michael couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Sarah noticed, her concern growing, but he brushed off her questions with lies about work stress. On the morning of the third day, the email arrived. Michael opened it alone in his office, his hands trembling so badly he could barely read the screen. Paternity test results. Alleged father Michael James Roberts' child, Lisa. No last name provided conclusion. 99.99% probability of paternity genetic markers. Match 2424. Result positive. Michael James Roberts is the biological father. The phone slipped from Michael's hands, clattering on the desk. He stared at the words until they blurred and reformed, until they seared themselves into his brain. Lisa was Emily, his daughter. His little girl who he'd mourned for 5 years, who he'd held a funeral for, who he'd wept over in the darkness of too many sleepless nights. She was alive. She'd always been alive, but that meant the truth crashed over him like a tsunami. Jennifer had been driving that night. Jennifer had been in the car with Emily. And according to Sarah's testimony, a woman had run from the burning vehicle before the baby was rescued. Jennifer had left Emily to die. His wife, the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd grieved, had abandoned their 3-month-old daughter in a burning car and run. Michael's chest constricted. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in his ears. He stumbled to the bathroom and vomited, his body rejecting the horror of what he'd learned. When he finally looked at himself in the mirror, he saw a stranger, a man who'd been living a lie for 5 years. Emily was alive. Sarah had saved her. Sarah had loved her, raised her, sacrificed everything for her. Sarah had been more of a mother to his daughter than Jennifer ever was. But now came the impossible question of what did he do with this truth? If he told Sarah, she'd know she'd been raising his biological child. Would she feel obligated to give Lisa back? Would it destroy the bond they'd formed if he didn't tell her? He'd be lying every day, living with his daughter and pretending she was someone else's child. And Lisa, God. Lisa, Emily. His little girl who didn't remember him, who called him Uncle Mike, who'd been abandoned by her birth mother and saved by a stranger who'd become her whole world. Michael sank to the floor, his back against the cold tile wall, and for the first time in 5 years, he wept. Not the numb tears of grief, but the raw, agonizing sobs of a man who'd lost everything and found it again in the most impossible way. His daughter was alive, and he had no idea what to do next. Michael waited 3 days before telling Sarah. 3 days of watching Lisa play in the garden. 3 days of feeling his heart break and heal simultaneously every time she smiled at him. 3 days of carrying a secret that was crushing him from the inside out. He asked Sarah to meet him in his office after Lisa went to bed. She came wearing concern like a second skin, sensing something was terribly wrong. "What's happening, Michael? You've barely spoken in days." He slid the DNA report across the desk without a word. Sarah picked it up, her eyes scanning the page. He watched as confusion became comprehension, comprehension became shock. The paper trembled in her hands. "This can't be right," she whispered. "This says you're..." That Lisa is my biological daughter? Yes. Sarah dropped into a chair as if her legs had given out. But that's impossible. I found her in a burning car. There was no one else. She stopped, her face going pale. Oh God. The accident. Your accident. Highway 75. 5 years ago, my wife Jennifer was driving. They told me Emily died in the fire. They told me there were no remains because the heat was too intense. Michael's voice was steady, but his hands shook. They lied. Or they were wrong. Or they never looked hard enough because I was too destroyed to ask questions. The woman I saw running. Sarah said slowly, horror dawning in her eyes. That was your wife. Jennifer left Emily in that burning car. She ran and let our daughter burn. The words tasted like poison. You saved Emily's life while her own mother chose money over her child. Money. Michael pulled up the financial records Marcus had uncovered. Life insurance. $5 million with Emily as the beneficiary. But if Emily died intestate as a minor, it would go to Jennifer as the surviving parent. She staged the whole thing. Made it look like they both died so she could collect and disappear. Sarah's hand covered her mouth. That's evil. I can't even comprehend abandoning your own baby to die. For 2 years, you've been raising my daughter, loving her, protecting her, giving up everything for her. Michael's voice cracked. You've been more of a mother to Emily than Jennifer ever was. Emily, Sarah repeated softly. Her real name is Emily, but she's Lisa now. She doesn't remember being Emily. She doesn't remember me. Michael stood, pacing like a caged animal. What do we do? Sarah, what the hell do we do? Sarah was silent for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. We protect her, however we have to. She's happy. She's healthy. She has a home. We don't destroy that just because biology says different. I want to be her father, Michael said, the admission raw and desperate. I've missed 5 years. 5 years I could have been holding her, knowing her, watching her grow. But I don't want to rip her away from you. You're her mother in every way that matters. Then we figure it out together, Sarah said firmly. We're already a family and everything but paperwork. Maybe we just make it official. For a moment, hope bloomed in Michael's chest. Maybe it could be that simple. Maybe they could just continue as they were, with the truth known between them, but Lisa protected from the trauma of it all. The doorbell rang at 9:30 at night, unexpected and jarring. Michael and Sarah exchanged glances. No one visited this late. No one knew about their arrangement except Marcus, and he would have called first. Michael walked to the front door, Sarah following. Through the security camera screen, he saw her, Jennifer. She looked exactly as he remembered, elegant, poised, her dark hair styled perfectly, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month. She smiled at the camera as if she'd just returned from a weekend trip, rather than rising from the dead after 5 years. Michael's hand froze on the doorknob. Who is it? Sarah asked, then looked at the screen and gasped. That's her, the woman from the accident. I remember her face. That's my wife, Michael said flatly. My supposedly dead wife. He opened the door. Jennifer's smile widened, revealing perfect white teeth that had probably been veneered in whatever tropical paradise she'd been hiding in. Hello, Michael. You're looking well. Her eyes slid past him to Sarah. Cool assessment in her gaze. And you must be the nurse who's been playing house with my family. Get off my property, Michael said, his voice deadly calm. Now, is that any way to greet your wife? We never divorced, darling. I'm still Jennifer Roberts, legally and financially. She pushed past him into the foyer, her heels clicking on marble. I heard through certain channels that you found our daughter. How wonderful. I've missed her terribly. You left her to die. Sarah's voice shook with fury. I saw you. You ran from that car while your baby was burning inside. Jennifer's expression didn't change. I'm sure you're confused. Trauma does that to memory. I barely escaped with my life that night. I've been in recovery, unable to contact anyone, suffering from amnesia. Her smile turned sharp. That's what my medical records will say. Anyway, quite thorough, quite official. Forged. Michael said, everything about you is a lie. Prove it. Meanwhile, I have every legal right to my daughter. Emily is mine by blood, and I never signed away custody. This woman has no legal claim to her whatsoever. Jennifer's eyes landed on Sarah like a predator spotting prey. In fact, one might argue she kidnapped a child from an accident scene and has been harboring her illegally for 2 years. Sarah went white. I saved her life. Did you, or did you see an opportunity, a wealthy family, a vulnerable child, a chance to insinuate yourself into money and comfort? Jennifer's voice dripped with false sympathy. That's what a judge will hear when I sue for custody. What do you want? Michael demanded. What's rightfully mine? 50% of all marital assets we never divorced. Remember, that's $100 million, plus custody of Emily, with generous child support, naturally. Shall we say $50,000 a month? Jennifer examined her manicured nails. I think that's fair compensation for the years I've missed with my daughter. You don't want Emily. You want money. I want both. But I'm willing to negotiate. She pulled a document from her designer handbag, setting it on the entry table. My lawyer prepared this. Agree to my terms, and I'll grant you visitation rights. Refuse, and I'll take Emily. Disappear again, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if she's safe. Your choice, darling. Michael picked up the document, scanning the legal jargon. It was worse than Jennifer had described. Full custody to her, unlimited access to his assets, a gag order preventing him from pursuing criminal charges for the insurance fraud. And Sarah would be prohibited from ever contacting Emily again. You have 30 days to respond, Jennifer said, walking toward the door. She paused, looking back. Oh, and Michael, I wouldn't recommend fighting this. I have witnesses who will testify I tried to save Emily that night. I have medical records of my trauma. I have 5 years of carefully constructed evidence. What do you have, a DNA test and a nurse with a savior complex? She left, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. Michael stood frozen, the document crushing in his grip. Sarah was crying, quiet sobs that shook her whole body. She's going to take Lisa, Sarah whispered. She's going to take my baby. Michael pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her as she fell apart. Over her shoulder, he stared at the door Jennifer had walked through. The woman who'd murdered their marriage, abandoned their child, and now wanted to destroy the family they'd built from ashes. No, he said quietly, steel in his voice. She's not. I don't care what it costs, what I have to do. Jennifer won't win, not this time. But even as he said it, fear coiled in his gut. Jennifer was right. She had the law on her side, carefully prepared lies, and the biological trump card. And in 30 days, unless they found a way to fight back, Lisa would be ripped from the only mother she'd ever really known. The clock was ticking, and they had no idea how to stop it. Michael spent the night after Jennifer's appearance making calls. By dawn, he'd assembled a team that would have made military strategists envious. Patricia Green, the most ruthless family law attorney in Texas, Marcus Williams, and 3 additional investigators, a forensic accountant, and a retired FBI agent who specialized in fraud cases. They gathered in Michael's office the next morning while Sarah kept Lisa occupied in the garden, both of them pretending everything was normal. "We have 30 days, Michael said without preamble. "Jennifer Roberts is claiming custody of my daughter and half my assets. I need to prove she abandoned Emily intentionally, that she's committed insurance fraud, and that she's unfit to parent. I need evidence that will hold up in court." Patricia, a steel-haired woman in her 60s, who'd never lost a custody case, nodded sharply. "Tell me everything." They spent 6 hours going through every detail. The accident, Sarah's rescue, Jennifer's disappearance, the insurance payout. Marcus had already started pulling threads, and what he found was damning. "Richard Carson," Marcus said, spreading files across the conference table. "Jennifer's attorney and her lover. He has a history, 2 prior cases of forged documents, both settled quietly. He was disbarred in California before moving to Texas and passing the bar here under a technically clean record. Can we prove he helped her fake her death?" Michael demanded. "Working on it. But I found something better." Marcus pulled up security footage on his laptop. "Hospital surveillance from the night of the accident. Watch." The grainy video showed the emergency entrance at 11:37 p.m. Sarah rushed through the doors, clutching a bundle of baby wrapped in her jacket. Medical staff swarmed immediately. But at 11:51, 14 minutes later, another figure appeared in the background. A woman in torn, soot-stained clothes, dark hair disheveled. Jennifer. Michael's blood went cold. She came to the hospital. Keep watching. The footage showed Jennifer standing in the waiting area, partially hidden behind a pillar. Sarah was visible through the glass doors of the emergency room, holding the baby while doctors examined them. Jennifer watched for exactly 43 seconds. Then she turned and walked away. "She saw Emily alive," Patricia said quietly. "She knew her daughter survived, and she walked away anyway." "That's not all." Marcus switched to audio files. Richard Carson's office was under investigation 2 years ago for unrelated fraud. The FBI had a wiretap. It was closed without charges, but the recordings still exist in archives. I have a friend who owed me a favor. He pressed play. The voices were crystal clear. "What about the kid?" Richard's voice, tinny through old speakers. "What about her Jennifer, callous and cold? If she survived?" "She didn't. Even if she did, no one will connect her to me. The baby is a loose end that ties itself up. Let her disappear into the system. And if Roberts finds out, he won't. He's too destroyed to ask questions. We're clear, Richard. $5 million clear." Silence filled the office as the recording ended. Michael's hands were clenched so tight, his nails drew blood from his palms. That's premeditation. Patricia said, her voice sharp with satisfaction. That's abandonment with intent. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. We can bury her with this. Will it hold up in court? Sarah's voice came from the doorway. They all turned. She stood there, pale but resolute, having heard everything. Will a judge really take away her parental rights based on old recordings and security footage, combined with the insurance fraud, the faked medical records, the testimony from witnesses? Yes, Patricia said. But Jennifer's lawyer will fight hard. This won't be easy. Then we dig deeper, Michael said. What else do we have? Marcus pulled up another file. I investigated Sarah's background too. Sorry, but I needed to know everything. Sarah stiffened, but nodded. What did you find? That you're a damn hero? Marcus's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. You were nominated for the Daisy Award for Extraordinary Nursing. Top of your class at Texas Women's University. 15 commendations for patient care. And then you threw it all away. I didn't throw it away. You did. The hospital didn't downsize. They fired you because you refused to release Emily to Child Protective Services. The system was overloaded, and they wanted to move her to a temporary facility out of state. You fought them. You said you'd take personal custody. They told you that wasn't policy, and you quit on the spot to file paperwork for temporary foster care. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She was 3 months old. She'd been through trauma. She needed stability, not to be shipped around like a package. You sacrificed your career, Michael said, his voice thick. Your marriage ended because your husband couldn't accept your decision. You lost your home, your income, your entire life, all for my daughter. For my daughter? Sarah corrected quietly. The moment I pulled her from that fire, she became mine. Biology doesn't change that. Patricia was making notes rapidly. This is good. This establishes you as Emily's psychological mother. 2 years of bonding, sacrifice, consistent care. Texas law recognizes psychological parentage in custody disputes. We can argue that removing Emily from your care would be traumatic and against her best interests. But Jennifer's the biological mother. Sarah said, doesn't that trump everything? Not if we can prove she's unfit and you're superior. We're building that case. Patricia looked at Michael. I assume you'll be petitioning for full custody as the biological father, with Sarah as co-parent. I want us to share legal custody. You're not married. Not yet, Michael said, looking at Sarah. But that can be remedied. Sarah's eyes widened. But before she could respond, Marcus cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Sarah, when's the last time you had a medical checkup? The question seemed to come from nowhere. Sarah frowned. I don't see how that's relevant. Your insurance records. I pulled everything. You had a mammogram 8 months ago at the free clinic on Ross Avenue. The results were flagged for follow-up. You never went. Sarah's face went ashen. I couldn't afford it. The follow-up was for suspected malignancy, Marcus said gently. Sarah, do you have cancer? The silence was deafening. Sarah's hand went to her chest, almost unconsciously. They said it might be. But without insurance, without money for treatment, what was the point of knowing? You have cancer. Michael stood so fast, his chair fell backward. And you didn't tell me. You'd already done so much. I couldn't. Sarah's voice broke. If I'm dying, I needed to make arrangements for Lisa. My sister Emma agreed to take her. I was going to tell you after everything was settled. Michael crossed the room in 3 strides and gripped her shoulders. How long have you known? 8 months. Maybe longer. Tears streamed down her face. I felt the lump a year ago, but I ignored it. Then the free clinic did screenings, and they said it was probably stage 2. Maybe stage 3 by now. I don't know. I haven't been able to afford the biopsy to confirm. Stage 2 breast cancer. Patricia's voice was sharp. That's treatable, highly treatable, but you need immediate intervention. I don't have $180,000 for treatment. I do, Michael said fiercely. We're calling the best oncologist in Dallas right now, today, this morning. Michael, I can't. You saved my daughter's life. Twice. Once from fire, and once from a system that would have lost her. You've loved her, raised her, given her everything when you had nothing. His voice cracked. Let me save you. Please. Sarah collapsed against him, sobbing. I'm so scared. I don't want to die. I don't want to leave Lisa. You're not going to die. I won't let you. Michael held her tight, his own tears falling into her hair. We're going to fight Jennifer. We're going to fight this disease. And we're going to win both battles because you don't give up on family. And you're my family now. You and Lisa both. Patricia watched the scene with something almost like tenderness in her usually stern expression. Then she stood, all business. Marcus, I need everything on Jennifer and Richard by end of week. Financial records, travel history, communications. Michael, get Sarah into treatment immediately. Her medical fight actually strengthens our case. A mother battling cancer who still put her child first versus a mother who abandoned her child for money. Optics matter. This isn't about optics, Michael said harshly. This is about saving the woman who saved my daughter. It's about both. And we're going to use every weapon we have. Patricia gathered her files. Jennifer Roberts picked the wrong family to threaten. By the time we're done, she'll wish she'd stayed dead. After they left, Michael and Sarah sat in his office, holding hands in the quiet. I meant what I said, Michael told her. About getting married? Not for the case, but because He stopped, choosing his words carefully. You're the strongest, most selfless person I've ever known. You gave my daughter a life when her own mother threw her away. And somewhere along the way, you gave me a life too. I love you, Sarah whispered. I think I have for a while. I was just too scared to admit it. Then marry me. Fight Jennifer with me. Fight this cancer with me. Let's be the family Lisa deserves. Sarah kissed him, soft and sweet and full of hope. Yes. Outside the window, Lisa was playing in the garden, completely unaware that the adults in her life were waging war to keep her safe. She was chasing butterflies again, her laughter carrying on the breeze. And for the first time since Jennifer had appeared on his doorstep, Michael allowed himself to believe they might actually win. The Dallas County Family Courthouse was built for judgment, all marble and cold fluorescent lighting. Michael sat at the plaintiff's table, Sarah beside him, both dressed in their most conservative clothes. Across the aisle, Jennifer wore cream-colored Chanel and a practiced expression of wounded motherhood. The trial lasted 4 days. 4 days of testimony, evidence, and legal warfare that would determine Lisa's future. Patricia Green opened with precision. Your Honor, this case is about a mother who chose money over her child, and a woman who chose a child over everything else. The evidence will show that Jennifer Roberts intentionally abandoned her 3-month-old daughter in a burning vehicle, collected $5 million in fraudulent life insurance, and disappeared for 5 years. Meanwhile, Sarah Mitchell rescued that child, sacrificed her career, her marriage, and her health to provide love and stability. The question before this court is simple. Who deserves to be Emily's mother, the woman who gave birth to her, or the woman who gave her life, Jennifer's attorney? A slick corporate type named Douglas Hammond, who'd replaced Richard Carson after his disbarment, countered smoothly. Your Honor, my client suffered severe trauma in that accident. She has medical documentation of traumatic brain injury and dissociative amnesia. She believed her daughter had perished. Now that she's recovered, she seeks to reunite with her child. Miss Mitchell, while well-intentioned, has no legal claim. She essentially kidnapped a child from an accident scene and has harbored her without proper custody arrangements. Blood matters, Your Honor. Jennifer Roberts is Emily's legal mother. The first witness was Marcus Williams. He presented the security footage from the hospital. The timestamp cleared Jennifer watching Sarah hold Emily, then walking away. If Miss Roberts believed her daughter was dead, Patricia asked, why did she go to the hospital? I assume to seek treatment for her injuries. Hammond objected. Yet she never checked in, never gave her name. She simply watched and left. The recording of Jennifer and Richard's conversation played next. The courtroom went silent as Jennifer's voice echoed. The baby is a loose end that ties itself up. Jennifer's face remained composed, but her hands clenched in her lap. Hammond tried to have it excluded as hearsay, but the judge allowed it as evidence of intent. Sarah testified on the second day. She told the story of that night, the flames, the crying baby, the desperate rescue. She described the scars on her hand, holding it up for the court to see. She detailed the 2 years of struggle, the sacrifices, the unconditional love. Miss Mitchell, Hammond said during cross-examination, isn't it true you were fired from your nursing position? I resigned because they asked you to relinquish the child to proper authorities. Because Emily had been through trauma. She needed consistency, not to be moved through the foster system like cargo. So you decided you knew better than child welfare professionals? I decided, Sarah said firmly, that a baby who'd been abandoned by her birth mother and pulled from fire deserved someone who would fight for her. And I was willing to be that person. Or even though you had no legal right. I had the right that matters, the right to protect a helpless child. The courtroom murmured approval. The judge banged his gavel for silence. Jennifer took the stand on the third day. She was polished, rehearsed. Her story of trauma and amnesia delivered with perfect timing. But under Patricia's cross-examination, cracks appeared. Miss Roberts, you collected $5 million in life insurance money. I was told Emily had died. I was entitled to those funds. You were told, or you assumed, the police said there were no survivors besides me. Yet you went to the hospital that night. You saw a baby being treated? Didn't you wonder if it might be Emily? I was in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly. For 5 years, Jennifer's composure slipped. I had amnesia. Yet your medical records show you were living in the Bahamas under your maiden name, spending insurance money on luxury accommodations. That's quite impressive for someone with severe brain trauma. Patricia introduced bank statements, travel records, purchases, a paper trail of Jennifer's extravagant lifestyle while Sarah and Lisa had been homeless. On the fourth day, a surprise witness appeared. Emma Mitchell, Sarah's sister, who'd been estranged from her for 2 years. I thought my sister was crazy, Emma testified, tears streaming down her face. When she took in that baby, when she lost everything I told her, she was destroying her life. We didn't speak for months. But then I saw them together. I saw how Lisa looked at Sarah. How Sarah would go without food to make sure Lisa had enough. How she'd walk 4 miles to the free clinic when Lisa had a fever because she couldn't afford gas. And I realized my sister wasn't crazy. She was the sanest person I knew. Because she understood what it meant to be a mother, not the person who gives birth, but the person who shows up every single day. The final witness was a child psychologist who'd evaluated Lisa over the past 3 weeks. Emily Lisa has a strong, healthy attachment to Sarah Mitchell, the doctor testified. Removing her from Miss Mitchell's care would constitute severe psychological trauma. The child refers to Miss Mitchell as Mommy and to Mr. Roberts as Daddy. She has no memory of Jennifer Roberts and shows signs of fear and anxiety when in her presence. Hammond tried to discredit this, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge took 2 hours to deliberate. When he returned, the courtroom held its collective breath. I've reviewed all evidence and testimony, Judge Morrison said, his voice grave. This court finds that Jennifer Roberts willfully abandoned her child with intent to defraud insurance companies. Her parental rights are hereby terminated. Furthermore, I'm recommending criminal charges for insurance fraud and child endangerment. Jennifer stood, her facade finally cracking. No, she's my daughter. You gave up that right when you left her to burn. The judge said coldly, "Guards, please escort Miss Roberts out." As Jennifer was led away, screaming threats and curses, the judge turned to Sarah and Michael. Mr. Roberts, as biological father, you're awarded full legal custody. Miss Mitchell, I'm granting you immediate adoption rights as co-parent, pending finalization. This child has 2 real parents, and Jennifer Roberts isn't one of them. Sarah collapsed into Michael's arms, sobbing with relief. In the gallery, Lisa sat with Emma, not understanding the legal jargon, but knowing somehow that everything was going to be okay. 3 months later, Sarah underwent surgery at Texas Oncology Center. The tumor was removed cleanly, followed by 6 weeks of radiation. Michael was there for every appointment, holding her hand through the nausea and exhaustion. Lisa drew pictures to decorate the treatment room, taped to the walls like prayers. The prognosis is excellent, the oncologist said after the final scan. You're cancer-free. With regular monitoring, your survival rate is 95% or higher. Sarah wept with relief. Michael beside her. Lisa climbing into her lap to hug her fiercely. 6 months after the trial. They stood in the garden behind Michael's home, their home now surrounded by friends and family. Sarah wore a simple white dress, flowers in her hair. Lisa was the flower girl, taking her role with utmost seriousness, tossing petals with careful precision. Michael stood at the makeshift altar, watching Sarah walk toward him, and felt 5 years of grief finally release its grip. This woman had saved his daughter, had saved him, had taught him that family wasn't about blood, it was about who showed up when the world was burning. "I take thee, Sarah," he said when the moment came, his voice steady, "to be my lawfully wedded wife. You gave my daughter life twice, once from fire, once from love. You gave me a reason to live again. I promise to stand by you, to protect you, to love you, for all the days I have left." Sarah's vows were simpler. "You saw me when I was invisible. You gave us a home when we had nothing. You proved that miracles happen in the rain. I love you, Michael, and I promise to love Emily, our Emily, as long as I breathe." When they kissed, Lisa cheered loudly, and the small gathering laughed. After the ceremony, they sat at a table in the garden for a simple dinner. Lisa insisted on sitting between them, one hand in Sarah's, one in Michael's. "Are we a real family now?" Lisa asked, her face serious. "We've always been a real family, sweetheart," Sarah said, kissing her forehead. "The realest," Michael agreed. Above them, the sky turned golden with sunset. And Michael thought about that rainy night 2 years ago, when a desperate woman had asked him for leftover food. He'd given her a sandwich. She'd given him everything. 2 years after that rainy night. Michael stands in his garden watching Sarah teach Lisa to plant apple seeds. They are no longer 3 broken people clinging to each other in the storm. They are a family, whole and healed. The little girl who once asked for leftover food now has everything she needs, not because of money, but because 2 strangers chose to see each other's humanity. Michael learned that wealth means nothing if your heart is empty, and that sometimes the family you lose leads you to the family you need. Sarah taught him that a mother is not the woman who gives birth, but the woman who shows up every single day, even when she has nothing left to give. And Lisa Emily proved that love is thicker than blood, that home is not a place, but the people who refuse to let you face darkness alone. Every night at dinner, they hold hands and say grace, not for the food on their table, but for the rainy night that brought them together. Because sometimes God answers prayers we did not know we were praying. Sometimes a sandwich changes everything. Sometimes the person asking for help is actually offering salvation. What moments in your own life seemed like endings, but were actually new beginnings? Have you ever been saved by someone you thought you were helping? Share your story in the comments below. We all need reminders that miracles happen when we choose to see each other.